Okay, here's a weird one. Have you ever, thought about why some cells in your body basically act like a starving teenager who found an unlocked pantry full of sugar, just vacuuming it up like crazy?
Ah, that's actually not a bad way to put it. It sounds dramatic, but maybe it is.
Because apparently they're not just faulty, they might just be trying really, really hard to survive some kind of internal chaos.
Yeah, and that's kind of the crux of this whole other perspective, isn't it? For decades, the main story, the conventional wisdom, has been that cancer is basically a typo, a spontaneous genetic mistake in the cell's DNA blueprint.
Right. Bad luck, bad genes.
Pretty much. And we've poured, trillions of dollars globally into targeting that idea. Destroy the cell with the bad blueprint.
Chemo, radiation, surgery, the standard toolkit.
Exactly. But, despite all that effort, for many common cancers, especially solid tumors, the 5-year survival rates haven't exactly skyrocketed. They've improved, sure, but not the revolution we might have expected.
Okay, so let's unpack that. If the main strategy, focusing on the blueprint error, isn't delivering the knockout punch we hoped for, maybe we're aiming at the wrong target. Or at least maybe not the first target.
That's the core question driving this alternative view, the metabolic view. It flips the script.
It suggests cancer isn't primarily a blueprint error like a software bug, but more like an energy crisis. A hardware failure, maybe.
Precisely. The
Yeah.
standard model says, find the mutation, kill the cell. Simple enough.
But this metabolic viewpoint throws in a twist, right? It asks, what if the real problem starts somewhere else? Like in the cell's power plants, the mitochondria.
Exactly. What if damage to those tiny energy factories happens first? And that damage forces the cell to desperately change how it makes energy just to stay alive.
And the DNA mutation everyone's so focused on, maybe that's a downstream effect, a symptom that pops up later after the cell's already in full-blown survival mode.
That's the idea. Healthy mitochondria, they need oxygen to work efficiently. It's called, oxidative phosphorylation, OXPHOS for short.
The high-efficiency engine.
Right. But when mitochondria get damaged, the cell often loses that ability. It can't use oxygen effectively anymore, so it has to switch to plan B,
Which is?
an older, much less efficient way to make energy, fermentation. Think yeast making beer, but inside your cells. It doesn't need oxygen, which is handy if the mitochondria are busted.
But there's always a but.
But it needs a huge amount of fuel to get the same energy output, specifically sugar, glucose.
Okay, so that's where my sugar-hogging vacuum cleaner comes in.
That's exactly it. To compensate for the inefficiency, the compromised cell goes into overdrive. It starts fermenting like mad and just sucks up glucose at 10, sometimes 20 times the rate of its healthy neighbor.
Wow. Just pure desperation for energy.
Absolutely. And this massive glucose uptake, this hypermetabolism, it's not just a theory, it's literally what doctors look for on a PET scan.
Right, the radioactive sugar they inject.
Yeah. The PET scan lights up brightest where the cancer cells are because they're gobbling up that glucose tracer like crazy. It's a direct window into this metabolic crisis. If it were just a DNA mistake, you wouldn't necessarily see this frantic energy grab as the defining feature.
So the cell isn't necessarily evil, it's just broken and starving.
Yeah.
Trying to survive.
In this model, yes, it's backed into an evolutionary corner. But okay, what causes that initial mitochondrial damage? What's the spark,
Good question. What throws the wrench in the works?
Well, it seems to be a combination. Usually you need two things. First, some kind of chronic low-level damage or inflammation humming along in a particular organ over a long time.
Like a background static of irritation.
Yeah, exactly. And second, you need an acute spark, something that pushes those already stressed mitochondria over the edge.
Okay, give me an example. How does that play out?
Think about lung cancer. The chronic damage could be years of smoking, right? That constant irritation and inflammation.
Okay, makes sense. The long setup.
Then the spark might be something like a bad bout of pneumonia, or maybe a nasty viral infection. That acute stress, layered on top of the chronic damage, could be enough to break the mitochondria's backs, forcing them into that fermentation survival mode.
Huh. That connects the dots differently than just smoking causes mutations. It's smoking creates the vulnerable state, then something else pushes it over.
Potentially, yes.
Huh.
And there's another factor mentioned, kind of a master switch that can act as a trigger systemically. Low vitamin D.
Vitamin D, really, how does that fit in?
Well, vitamin D is described as basically the master regulator of your immune system. If your levels are chronically low, your immune surveillance, the system that normally cleans up damaged cells, gets weak.
so it can't police the neighborhood properly.
Right. And that weakened surveillance could allow cells with damaged mitochondria, the ones starting to go rogue metabolically, to slip through the cracks and multiply. Low D could be the systemic spark, especially for things like colon cancer, where immune function in the gut is key.
Wow. Okay, so if damaged mitochondria are potentially the root issue, or at least a much earlier issue, then the whole strategy for, well, for prevention and maybe even support needs a major rethink.
It really does. Instead of just focusing on killing the bad blueprint cells, we need to think about how to protect, repair, and maybe even clean up those cellular batteries, the mitochondria.
And print them up. How do you do that? Like a tiny cellular mechanics?
Sort of. The body actually has a built-in process for this. It's called autophagy. Autophagy literally means self-eating.
Sounds unpleasant.
Ah, yeah, but it's incredibly useful. It's the body's recycling program. Cells break down their own old, damaged, or junk parts, including faulty mitochondria, and recycle the raw materials to build new healthy parts.
Okay, that sounds better. So autophagy is key for mitochondrial health. How do we encourage that? Turn up the recycling program.
One of the most powerful ways is actually doing nothing, or rather eating nothing, fasting.
Ah, fasting. I know that was coming.
Yep. Intermittent fasting is a great start. Even just narrowing your eating window each day, say 2 meals, or even 1 meal a day, gives your system a break from constant digestion and nutrient influx. That downtime signals the cells to start cleaning house via autophagy.
So skipping breakfast might actually be good for my mitochondria.
It could be. And then there's prolonged fasting going, say, 3 or maybe 5 days without food, perhaps once a month. That really ramps up autophagy.
That sounds intense.
It is. And some sources even talk about much longer fasts, like 20 or 30 days, as being incredibly powerful, even in advanced cancer stages. And this is but that's an extreme intervention. It needs careful medical supervision, especially for people who are already frail, thin, or elderly. It's not something to jump into lightly.
Got it. Supervision required for the heavy-duty stuff. Okay, fasting helps clean up. What about fuel? If the problem starts with messed up energy production and sugar hogging,
then you absolutely have to address the fuel source and how the body handles it. This means tackling insulin resistance.
insulin resistance, that seems to pop up everywhere.
Because it's fundamental. Constantly high insulin levels, often driven by high carb intake, is described as one of the biggest destroyers of mitochondria. It keeps pushing the cells towards that inefficient sugar-burning pathway.
So the ketogenic diet, low carb, high fat, comes into play here.
Definitely. By cutting carbs drastically, you lower insulin, reduce the reliance on glucose, and encourage the body to burn fat for fuel, which mitochondria, especially healthy ones, are very good at. It directly counters that metabolic dysfunction.
Okay, so less sugar, fewer carbs.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned something earlier, the snacking crime. What's that about? It's not just what you eat, but when.
Yes, this is crucial. The frequency of eating might be just as damaging, maybe even more so for insulin resistance than the total amount of carbs sometimes. Every time you eat, even a small healthy snack, you trigger an insulin response.
Ah, so grazing all day keeps insulin constantly elevated.
Exactly. It never gives your system a break. It contributes massively to insulin resistance, regardless of whether the snacks are low carb or not. So avoiding snacking, sticking to distinct meals, gives your mitochondria a rest and allows that autophagy cleanup crew time to work.
Give the batteries a break.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Okay, so we need rest and cleanup via fasting and diet. What about making the mitochondria stronger? Like exercise for the cell engines?
That's where this fascinating concept called hormesis comes in. It's the idea that small, controlled doses of stress can actually trigger adaptations that make the system stronger and more resilient. Like exercise makes muscles stronger.
Right. What doesn't kill you makes your mitochondria buffer.
Huh. Something like that. Think of it as an extreme boot camp for your mitochondria. And one powerful tool is cold.
Cold therapy, like ice baths and cold showers. That sounds deliberately uncomfortable.
It is, but think about what happens. When you expose your body to cold, say 40 or 50-degree water, it has to fight like crazy to maintain its core temperature of 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit.
Shivering like mad.
Right, and what's generating that heat? Your mitochondria. They have to ramp up energy production dramatically. That intense workload forces them to adapt, become more numerous and more efficient over time. It's stress, but it leads to strength.
Okay, so cold forces them to work harder and get tougher. What other hormetic stresses can we use?
Oxygen is another key area. Remember, the damaged state often involves low oxygen hypoxia, so you
Yeah.
want to do things that improve oxygen delivery and utilization.
Exercise, presumably.
Absolutely. Exercise is probably the single best thing. Anything from long, brisk walks to high-intensity interval training, HIIT. It floods the body with oxygen and improves cardiovascular function.
Makes sense. More oxygen, better mitochondrial function.
But here's a slightly counterintuitive twist, another hormesis play. Intermittent hypoxia.
Wait, intermittent low oxygen. Didn't we just say low oxygen was bad?
Generally, chronic low oxygen is bad, yes. But brief, controlled periods of reduced oxygen, like holding your breath for short bursts during exercise, specific breathing techniques, or even using training masks that restrict air slightly, can create a rebound effect.
How does that work?
The body adapts to the temporary shortage by improving its ability to carry and utilize oxygen more efficiently in the long run. It's like training at altitude. Short-term stress, long-term gain in oxygen capacity.
Huh. Okay, so calculated stress from cold and oxygen manipulation. Now, what about just avoiding things that directly trash the mitochondria in the first place? Shielding the batteries.
Definitely crucial. And some of the culprits might surprise you. One that gets highlighted is EMF, electromagnetic fields.
Like from Wi-Fi, routers, computers, phones.
Exactly. It's described almost like invisible tobacco. The proposed mechanism is pretty concerning. Apparently, EMF exposure can trigger voltage-gated calcium channels in our cell membranes to open up.
Calcium channels, what does that do?
It allows excess calcium to flood into the cell. And where does a lot of that excess calcium end up? Inside the mitochondria. It essentially gunks them up, interferes with their function, and can lead to their destruction. We can't see it or feel it directly, but it could be a constant, low-level source of mitochondrial damage.
Yikes. Okay, invisible tobacco. What else? What about more obvious radiation?
Ionizing radiation, the kind from CT scans, X-rays, that's a known mitochondrial damager. It directly injures them.
So be cautious about frequent scans.
Yeah. Obviously, sometimes they're medically necessary, but there's a choice. Maybe ask if an MRI or an ultrasound could provide the needed information instead. And if you do need an X-ray, be really insistent about proper shielding, especially for sensitive areas like the thyroid or reproductive organs.
Okay, good tip. I remember back when I worked briefly as an X-ray tech assistant, I thought the lead aprons were such a hassle for low-dose stuff. Looking back, maybe not so smart. All those dental X-rays, too. It adds up.
It really can. Every little bit of protection helps. Another thing to be cautious about is iron.
Iron. Isn't that essential? We need it for blood.
We do. But excess iron is a problem. Cancer cells seem to absolutely love iron. They use it to help them multiply faster. It acts like a catalyst for division.
So avoid extra iron.
Generally, yes. Avoid iron supplements unless you have blood tests confirming a genuine deficiency. And maybe be mindful if you cook everything in cast iron skillets, especially if you suspect you might already have high iron levels, because excess iron also generates a lot of inflammation and oxidative stress.
Okay, so manage iron. And if we're making a worst offenders list for mitochondrial damage, what's at the very top?
Oh, easy one. Refined sugar and refined starches. They directly feed that inefficient fermentation pathway, spike insulin, cause inflammation.
No.
They're just bad news all around for mitochondrial health and setting up that crisis state. First things to ditch.
Got it. Sugar and refined carbs out. Is there anything simple we can add for protection, maybe in the kitchen?
Actually, yes. A neat little tip for grilling. When you char meat and fat, you create carcinogenic compounds, right?
Yeah, the blackened bits.
But if you marinate the meat beforehand or cook it with herbs like garlic, rosemary, thyme, sage, onions, and those plant compounds, the phytochemicals, seem to counteract a lot of that damage. They act like little mitochondrial protectors against the grilling carcinogens.
Huh. So my herb garden is also a cancer shield.
Nice.
In a way, yeah. Okay, so we've covered cleaning up, fueling right, hormetic stress, and avoidance. What about directly boosting the body's defenses, the immune system?
Right, the police force. We mentioned vitamin D already. Still number one.
Absolutely critical. It's the general of the immune army. Especially important if someone's gone through treatments like chemo or radiation that weaken the immune system. Aim for blood levels of, say, 60 to 80 nanograms per milliliter minimum. Don't guess. Get tested.
Okay, vitamin D level check. What else for immune backup?
Colostrum is interesting. It's the very first milk produced, packed with immune factors and beneficial bacteria. Think of it as literally getting mom's immune system starter kit.
So it helps rebuild immunity. Yeah, it's suggested to be particularly helpful if the gut microbiome and immune system have been damaged, say by antibiotics or steroids like prednisone. It helps restore that foundational gut immunity.
Okay. And what about activating the specific killer cells that target cancer?
Right, the natural killer cells, or NK cells. Their job is to take out infected cells and cancer cells. There are compounds known to rev them up.
Like what?
Beta-glucans are a big one. These are complex carbs found in medicinal mushrooms. Think reishi, shiitake, turkey tail. They directly activate NK cells. Another one mentioned is AHCC, which is derived from shiitake mycelia, also known for boosting NK cell activity significantly.
Mushrooms and seaweed extracts for the win.
Okay.
Any other key support players we should mention? Quick hits.
Definitely. Folate, that's a B vitamin. A deficiency in folate can apparently mimic radiation damage at the DNA level. Best sources are dark leafy greens and liver if you eat it.
Good old greens. What else?
Magnesium, absolutely essential. Mitochondria literally cannot make energy without it. Plus, it helps with tons of other things like muscle cramps, sleep.
Yeah.
Most people are deficient.
Magnesium. Check. Anything else for energy production?
NAD. It's a coenzyme crucial for mitochondria to actually extract energy from food. You can support NAD levels with precursors like niacin, which is vitamin B3.
Niacin. Doesn't that cause flushing?
It can, yeah, the niacin flush where you get red and tingly. It's harmless, but can feel weird. So if you try B3, start with a really low dose, like maybe 50 milligrams, see how you react. But it's structurally vital for energy.
Okay. Low and slow on the B3. Got it. So pulling all this together, it sounds like the big message is less about declaring war on rogue cells and more about cultivating a healthy internal environment.
That's a great way to put it. It's about supporting the mitochondria, keeping the immune system robust, managing inflammation, avoiding key toxins, essentially creating conditions where cells don't get forced into that desperate, sugar-guzzling survival mode in the first place.
Shifting from offense to defense and support.
Exactly. Proactive health for the cellular environment.
And given all the invisible toxins like EMF and maybe stuff in our water, is there one big practical investment that makes sense based on this?
Well, thinking about minimizing overall toxic load, since we really are kind of swimming in a sea of chemicals these days, a really good water filter seems like a smart move, not just for drinking water, but maybe even a shower filter, since you absorb chemicals through your skin too. Reducing that constant exposure helps everything else work better.
Right. Clean water in, clean water on. Makes sense.
So if building this resilient internal state involves these little doses of calculated stress, cold, fasting, exercise, maybe even brief hypoxia, maybe the path to robust health isn't about seeking constant comfort. Maybe embracing a little bit of discomfort intentionally is the key.
That's a pretty provocative thought to end on. A slightly uncomfortable life is the ultimate comfort.
Makes you think, right? What's maybe one tiny, manageable, healthy stress you could consciously add to your routine starting today?